with the new age of information, yeah, there's a support group for absolutely anything and everybody.
I wanted to say that I think people underestimate underestimate the value that they will get out when they're dealing with their internal trauma, because everything that we do in our life on a subconscious level, we do either to feel pleasure or to avoid pain. And the thing is, when you don't deal with the trauma that you experience, in yoga they say some scars, you will have scars from the traumas, and on a subconscious level you will behave in a way that you are avoiding those scars, you are avoiding those energy blocks that you've stored over years of and years of pain. So the question I would ask you, if you don't want to deal with your trauma, is, do you want to build a life out of pain, or do you want to build a life in freedom? Because when you don't deal with those things, you will draw pain into your life, because on a subconscious level you will just, yeah, because the brain loves what's familiar, you will always go to that pain again and again and again if you don't deal with it. So better deal with it now and build a life in freedom.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes there's a bit of divine timing with these things as well, occasionally. I don't know about you, but I've met people over time when we might have been talking for ages, and then one day they just say something really tiny like, oh, I do wonder if I have a problem, or if I should have done something differently. I think maybe I was in the wrong, and it's something really big. And I'm like, do you want like a recommendation for like a therapist or a hypnotherapist or something? And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not ready for that. I'm like, okay. And I do see that for some people, they're not in an environment that would support that change, and they're not ready for how much, I've met some people, and I know some people very well, who have suppressed their feelings for like their whole lives, like decades and decades and decades. And they know at this point they've built such a big life on suppressing their feelings, like neglecting themselves, and avoid, all of that stuff, that if they even acknowledged out loud, I've been doing this, their entire life would just explode. Like nothing would be the same ever again. They would have to, a lot of these people would probably get divorced. They would probably have to move house. They would have to navigate an entirely new life. And a lot of those people just would prefer to be in a familiar and miserable life than live a brand new one that they don't know.
It's comfort. It's sheer comfort. You get so used to a certain routine, a certain way of life, a certain society, a certain mindset, a certain belief, and everything just becomes certain. But nothing becomes exciting. Nothing becomes different. Everything just becomes certain. And it's not easy changing your routine. It's not easy changing something in your life because you don't know. People like doing things that they know. People like doing things that they know the outcome. They know what's on the other side. The thing about living life to try to heal yourself is you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know how your life will change. There's a recent quote that I really, really like. It's not really a quote. It's probably a saying. I don't know where it's from, but it's high risk, high reward. If you go for the home run, you'll win the game. And then you have another game to get to. But if you keep hitting bunts where the ball just rolls, you're not going to move from where you are. So you're just going to keep hitting bunts, just letting the ball roll. Because if you swing a bat, you might miss. But one day you'll hit the ball and that'll go really, really far. You'll get a home run and you'll feel good about it. But life isn't that easy. Life is super complicated. Is if you land a home run, you might not live in the same place. You might be with a different partner. You might have a different change of pace. But whatever it is, like, you just kind of have to go for it, and that's the only way. And I think that that gives a lot of people an extreme amount of anxiety because there's only one way to do it, and that's forward.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I agree that it is hard sometimes to dare to change. But I read a fascinating book the other day where a nurse was guiding throughout her career thousands and thousands of people through the dying process and talked to them about dying. And the number one thing that people regretted before they died was, I wish I had the courage to live my life and to change. And I think that is a great thing to learn from, because yes, change can be scary. Yes, you don't know what's on the other side of change, but it is 100% better than staying in a state of misery all life long and suppressing your feelings. Because you also have to think about it that way. The only thing that can be afraid is your ego, your thoughts. That is the thing that is afraid. But on a much deeper level, your core, your light, your soul, whatever you want to call it, your spirit, it can never be afraid. And I think you have to just trust life and live it from a soul's perspective. Just trust life that everything will play out for the highest good, and respond to everything with love. Because you always have the decision if you want to respond to a certain situation with scarcity and with being afraid, or if you want to approach it from love. And one of the things that Nick always says, who is not with us today, but that I learned from him, is love is always the answer. So if you're scared, if you're afraid of future changes, love it, love yourself, love life. And if you approach everything from a perspective of love, everything will play out for the highest good. That is at least what I believe, what's my truth, you know.
Yeah.
Are you looking to get your energy in order, spring clean your life, and manifest things you actually want? My Align Your Life Starter Pack has helped people to relieve insomnia, anxiety, to become grounded, and to manifest exciting new things, as well as cut energetic cords with people who were draining their energy. And as a bonus, it's designed with non-visual and neurodivergent people in mind, so it's more accessible than most things currently on the market. Affordable and instantly downloadable, you can find it at mooksharrishill.com/mybl. Align your life, reclaim your power.
You know, it's one fact. We get one shot. That's something we all know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Are you telling me, Noah, that you don't believe in reincarnation?
Oh God, a can of worms, Eric. Can of worms. Oh Jesus. That guy. Reincarnation. It doesn't help. And I'll tell you why it doesn't help. Because you trick yourself into unknowingly believe that you'll have a second chance, to which I think the only way to really live life is to believe that you don't get a second chance at being you.
I have a very different emotional reaction to reincarnation, which is that I really want to make sure that I do my work here this time around, because I don't want to come back.
Well, in Hinduism, that's the aim. The whole thing is that you don't want to be reincarnated. The whole thing is you want to go back to what, I can't remember the Indian word. But it's going back to the source of all things. The whole point of reincarnation is that you don't fucking do it again. If you are reincarnated, there's something more that you need to do, whether it be a horse, a fish, another person, whatever it is, you have something to experience again and you need to do something. At least that's what they say in Hinduism and Buddhism. But the whole point of it is to not reincarnate. I think for me, like, I believe not in reincarnation, but in soul possession. I believe that we all go to the same space, despite anything you do. You go to the same place. You let go of pain, you let go of your life, you let go of everything, and you return to the place where we were before we were born. And you either go again to experience another life. You don't get to be you again. Like, I don't get to be Noah again. I only have one shot at being me. This is the only incarnation of me. I'm going to die one day. I will not have thoughts. I will not have emotions. I will be dust. And beyond dust, I will be nothing. But one day, my energy, my soul might come back. It might. But I find that very different than reincarnation.
Yeah.
I think that there is a choice. Either we have the choice to return, or the source, God, the universe, whatever it is, plucks you from this little collection of souls and goes, I wonder what you can experience again. I want to experience things through you. Show me how I can feel through you. And I think that's maybe how the universe expresses itself. You know, why are we alive? Why are we conscious? Why do we have thoughts? Why do I think about, like, sorry, my cat. Why do I think about my cat? Like, why do I think about my cat? Why do I think about couscous? I don't know. Why? We could ask these things for all of eternity, but like, the number one core thing is that we're here. You know, like, we're here, trees are here, the earth is here, the stars are here, everything's here. And we can go off and on and on and on for all eternity to ask why anything is here. But at the end of the day, everything just is here. Everything just is.
Yeah. In my early 20s, I had a friend who, interestingly, he was extremely religious. Even like, yeah, for an English bloke, he was extremely religious. And he also suffered terribly from really bad untreated PTSD, and as a result self-medicated with a lot of really hard drugs. But he taught me this phrase: so heavenly minded, no earthly good. So it brings home to me this idea of like a balance. Like, you can be spiritual and you can think about these things, but if that's where you live all of the time, how can you relate to and help and address like what's going on actually in the present moment on earth with the people that you share your life with?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Harris.
And but the concept of incarnation is super interesting because coincidence again, I'm currently reading a book about reincarnation and the soul's plan before we go here. And one interesting thing that you said, Noah, is that the only way to live this life is as if we just have one shot. And that is actually the reason why we forget that we had former lives, because the soul feels that's my shot here. And now I have to make all the experiences that I planned to grow and to release old karmic energy states. But yeah, incarnation is super, super interesting. And I personally do believe in it. I definitely do. Also because of the things that I experienced on ayahuasca. I experienced myself as a shaman in a different life, as a healer in Egypt, as a pirate who got bitten by a shark. Crazy story, by the way. Like, I was thrown from the plank in my former life, and I felt the bite of the shark while I was in the ayahuasca ceremony. Crazy stuff. But that is why I also believe in reincarnation, and intuitively it feels right. And when you look throughout all the great religion, even in the Bible, there are phrases that refer to incarnation. And for sure, Buddhism, Hinduism, all of those great religions have some sort of reincarnation in there. So I definitely do believe that some things to it, but if I would have said this to my former me 3 years ago, I would say, fuck off, I don't believe in shit. So I can definitely understand why people don't believe in it. Yeah.
I started listening to Dolores Cannon's books about 5 years ago. She was a prolific past life regressionist, and her books are basically the transcripts of sessions she did with certain people. And the only reason I bought I listened to all of my books on audio. I haven't been able to sit and read and concentrate on a book for like at least 10 years. So I listened to all of mine. And I'd only picked her books because I wanted to listen to something that wasn't business related, because I've listened to so much like business and mindset stuff. And I was like, I just want to listen to something totally different. And I started listening to her stuff, and it started to feel very true to me. And I'd never considered it. I was just listening to it because I wanted just something else to think about, not because I believed in it in any way. And as the more I listened, the more I was like, yeah, I think this feels really familiar. And then I listened to one of her books was Keepers of the Garden. And this guy that she regressed ended up talking about this being his first life on Earth. And I won't go too much into it, but basically by the end of that book, I think for about 2 weeks, every time someone was speaking to me, I was like slightly leaning back from them, like, oh my God, is this real? Like, it totally messed with my concept of just life and everything. And since then, I don't know if you've got it on Netflix, but there's a program on there called Surviving Death. And I think at least one of the episodes explores reincarnation. And there are scientists on there who set out to disprove reincarnation. And then they end up being so inundated with data that supports reincarnation that a lot of them have then been converted into believing that it looks like it probably is true. And all of that stuff I find it really fascinating. I'm happy to be wrong, but it's what seems to make sense. And it's not just me, I'm always open to maybe I'm reading my intuition incorrectly. Like, I always like to consider that I might be wrong about all sorts of things. But so far, every time something like this comes up, I'll just consider it. I'm prepared to be wrong, and then it always turns out to be true. So
yeah, and it's also like, whenever you talk about the stuff in spirituality or reincarnation, you get, I can't really explain it on the mental plane again, but you just get the strong feeling of truth in your heart, and you feel like the source or light or whatever you want to call it. And when you speak about those things, it just feels so right intuitively. And that is also with all the scientific proof, quote unquote, why I believe that reincarnation definitely has something to it. And it's also a very beautiful perspective on life. And I think you can pick your perspective on life. So why don't pick something that helps you, right?
yeah.
So for me, it definitely helps, because also in his book, it's unfortunately it's written in German, so I can't refer it to you, but it's a brilliant book. And he says that only the bravest souls out there reincarnate on Earth, because Earth is the perfect place to go through pain, to go through suffering, and to grow tremendously on a soul level. So yeah, just by that, we can all feel super brave that we decided to actually come here and to experience all of the shit that is going on here. I mean, right now in this time with Corona, with war and everything, we experience so much. And alone for that we picked this experience beforehand, I think we can all be super proud of ourselves and that we are so brave.
Definitely. I have moments when in the past, well, not so much now, but when I've had moments in the past where I'm like, fucking hell, this is really shit. Like what I'm going through is just so, so shit. And then there's this little voice in my head that goes, haha, you chose this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck off, shut up.
Beautiful. Yeah, definitely. But I definitely do believe that we've all chosen this. And for sure, I also do believe that we have free will, but like the soul plan in general, what we want to release, what we want to experience, we planned beforehand, but we are free how we want to go that way, you know? We kind of know the destination, but the path in between, that is our free will, and we can go more to the right, more to the left, and it depends how fast we reach destination. But in the end, yeah, it's a beautiful perspective on life, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wanted to ask you both something. I have listened to and been involved in podcasting for a couple of years now and done quite a lot of, I've been interviewed a lot. I've interviewed a lot of people. And a lot of the people I've interviewed have been trans people, women, people of color and stuff like that. And you know, I've also listened to a lot of podcasts by like white guys who are talking about mental health and things like that. You know, lots of good ones. But I feel like when I started listening to your podcast, I listened to it because Nick, one of your co-hosts, you interviewed his cousin Esther, who's also a podcaster, and she's a friend of mine. And she said to me, "Oh, by the way, I was interviewed." We always listen to each other's interviews. And you know, her podcast, for those of you who haven't listened, is 50 Shades of Gender. So she talks all about gender identity, and that was my core subject for like 7 years. And she said, "Oh, I've been interviewed on this podcast, and I didn't know you guys. I'd never listened to anything of yours, but I wanted to support her and really like see what you guys had to say." And there's always a tiny part of me when I enter those kind of environments where gender identity is being discussed. I'm never sure. Like I'm always just like everybody else. I've made many mistakes over time. Just because I'm part of the community, it doesn't mean I haven't also said the wrong thing and offended people and just fucked things up or been a dickhead. So I know that that's a possibility, but I always hope that like people's hearts are in the right place. That's really what I'm looking for. And when I got to the end of that episode with you guys talking to Esther, I was honestly so happy and so like touched. And that's what really got me to listen to. So I haven't listened to every episode of yours, but I do listen to your podcast quite a lot. And it really strikes me how empathetic you guys are and how thoughtful you are. And I don't feel that you ever buy into a lot of the kind of stereotypical masculine bullshit. I don't feel that from any of you at any point. And in fact, you also talk about stereotypes and like, oh, I don't want to live that way and stuff. And I wondered if you guys feel that you've become more empathetic since ayahuasca, or were you always a bit like that? Or, you know, like, and how, you know, because I feel like you guys do masculinity in such a healthy and like amazing way, and it makes me so happy to like listen to you guys talking together and how supportive you are of each other. And I wondered if firstly you're aware of that, and also like what's your experience with other men?
Wow, thank you so much, first of all. Like every time when someone says that what we're doing has helped them or touches them, it warms my heart so much, because we definitely do put a lot of heart into that. And for me personally, to answer the question if I always have been this way, the fuck no. Like 3 years ago, like I was like the greatest dickhead on earth. If I look back, and I have to be honest with myself, really, I was not in touch with my feelings at all. The way I treated people was far away from from good. To be honest, I was just dealing with my own stuff, and I was, living that masculine stereotype where I played football. Yeah, I was not in touch with my heart at all, and psychedelics really turned it over, because I realized on a very deep level that I know it's the very start thing a lot of people experience when they are using psychedelics, but we are all one. And even on a how do you say that, even on a scientific way of looking on things, we are all one. Like literally everything started in singularity, and from that point on, universe is expanding. So we are all one, and we all come from the same place. And if we are all one, why should I treat another human being in a bad way? Why should I not see the beauty in God's creation, if you want so? So that really gave me a different perspective. And for me, I realized, because like I've never been super social, because I was bullied in school, and I really had a lot of limiting beliefs regarding other people. So that was a big one for me. But I realized in my life, everything is about people. I just love people. I love to listen to their stories. I love how they manage to go through their lives. I love to learn from them. I love to lead conversations with people. So, and I am genuinely interested. And that is something that I can definitely recommend everybody who feels a little bit social anxiety. If you're talking to someone, really be interested in the perspective of the person you're talking to, because when you're truly interested in him or her, or them or whatever, then you are just in the conversation, and it's super exciting, and you can dig deeper and try to understand the other person's point of view, and all of a sudden a conversation is super exciting. So yeah, again, I've not always been this way, but I'm super happy that I figured myself out, and I'm learning so much about conversations still. And yeah, I hope that answers your question, sort of.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Dominic. Noah, what about you?
Well, it's interesting. I've gone through cycles of it. Definitely not. How do I explain this? I definitely felt like I had to be a much bigger man than I actually am before ayahuasca. I definitely had traits of toxic masculinity, and definitely a lot of like, I have to be the best at something, or I have to be beefy, and I have to, I have to, I have to, I have to, I have to. And, I came to this realization where it's exhausting to have like opinions about everything, or like you don't want to talk to a specific person because you've already made a prejudgment about that person based on the way that they are, based on the way that they look, based on the way that they speak, which was something that I used to do quite often. And I'm generally somebody who likes to accept everybody. But at the same time, because of my past traumas, I've had some judgments about some people. And after ayahuasca, I didn't have that anymore. Like you and I and Dominic and everybody else on earth, we're all part of the same thing. We're all part of the same fleshy goop that came from a star thousands of fucking millions of years ago. It doesn't make any sense for me to have like a gargantuan opinion about how somebody expresses themselves, how somebody identifies himself, how somebody lives their life. I don't have an opinion about it, quite honestly, because if you'll let me live the way that I need to, as long as I'm not murdering babies and causing havoc in the streets, I think I'd be cool with whatever you want to do and whatever somebody else wants to do. I think that people get so mixed up in what they have to do and what they feel like they should do, they don't ever really ask themselves, well, what do I want to do? I am perfectly cool being engaged to a wonderful, wonderful lady and having a blind cat living up in the middle of the bumblefuck nowhere mountains making commercials. I am perfectly okay with doing all of that, and just the same way as that, like, some friends of mine, they're okay. Like, some of them are men who like being a lot more feminine, and I am perfectly okay with that. They're great people, and we can share a beer and a martini. It's the other way around. I'm the one with the martini, they're the one with the beer, and it's fine. I used to be so gung-ho about weirdness and like, what are you doing? That's weird. I don't like that. Like, when I was a kid, I used to be a lot like that because I needed structure, and I just had this very rigid black and white idea about what life and people were like. And before ayahuasca, I had opened up, but then ayahuasca was like, let's crack this bitch open, and boy, did she crack this bitch open. And, and so I'm
I
just
love it.
here, and I like talking with people. I like figuring out what their life views are. I like figuring out what's going on in the world. And I certainly, the main point of our podcast, if anybody wants to come listen to us, our main mission is to embrace spirituality, psychedelics, and the human experience with an open heart, mind, and soul. That's our mission. That's what our podcast is all about. And whatever the human experience is, whether it be the good, the bad, even though I don't like those terms, the ugly, the amazing, whatever it is, we have to confront it and talk about it and say, what do we think of this? How do we feel? Let's embrace it. So we embrace everybody. Even if you've done some questionable shit, we want to figure it out. We just want to either figure it out or talk about it or whatever, because there's so much more to this life than just sometimes some of our black and white views coming into play.
100%. So with your sort of perspective and your openness and your, you both come across as being very comfortable with people who are different and interesting and all of that stuff. Do you ever find yourself in a position with other men who are like kind of uncomfortable with how open-minded you are?
I've never come across somebody like a man who is uncomfortable with how open we are on the podcast personally or on social media or anything like that. That hasn't happened yet. It may happen. And if it does, I would just explain to that dude, be who you are. Let us be who we are. Like, nothing they can do is going to affect the way that we conduct ourselves in the podcast or going to hurt our egos or the way that we express ourselves as men, because all four of us are men, and we, express ourselves in very different ways in that regard. And I don't know, I've never had an issue with somebody being like, you're not manly enough. I don't give a rat's ass. I don't give a fuck. Like, how am I, I would rather be Noah enough than man enough.
Hell yeah. It's a good one.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, for me neither. Like, I never had bad experience with men telling me that I'm not man enough. The funny thing about this, it is that a lot of men that I've talked to after I'm talking to them, they are telling me, I think it's super good that you're honest. Because like what I experienced in conversations, what is the more beautiful thing about that is whenever you are giving yourself very vulnerable, and when you show yourself to be vulnerable, you give the other person an invitation to also be vulnerable and to also be open and to also talk about the deep shit of life and not just stay on the surface. Because like for sure, some conversations stay on the surface and it's perfectly fine. But whenever I'm talking to friends or in podcasts, I want to go to the deep shit, you know, I want to go to the feelings. I want to talk about what's bothering me, what challenges I'm facing, what dreams I have, what feelings I go through. And I personally found that a lot of people are thankful that I give them the opportunity to be vulnerable themselves. So yeah, and also like I want to circle back on the thing before, because whenever you have a problem with how a person lives, or whenever you judge another person for the way they live, it truly means that you judge the part of yourself that you don't allow yourself to feel. And I think that is a super big one to consider for everybody who still finds themselves to judge other persons. Whenever you find yourself judging someone for not being man enough or judging other persons for acting weird, it's because you don't allow yourself to act out your own weirdness. But your weirdness is here. Like it is here, it is part of yourself, and everything is you. So when you don't want to judge everyone anymore, just accept yourself fully and you will release the judging.
Mm. Yeah, I fully agree with that. In my household, I was very lucky. I mean, you know, every family's got their shit. I was very lucky that in my household, weird was not a bad word. And in fact, and my father also brought a very strong desire that if something you do that is not important irritates somebody, you should do more of it. so, so for me, like, you know, I don't go out of my way to wind people up. But if somebody lets me know that something I've done that is totally not important and it doesn't affect them in any way, and they're just being a bit twatty, if they let me know, oh, well, I didn't like that thing that you did, I'm like, brilliant, I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more. I'm going to be more me. I'm going to be more annoying. And I think of all the things that me and you guys and, you know, like, we've all had to deal with, I think being taught that there's part of you that is, you should never be ashamed of it, and that actually your weirdness is your superpower. Like I've always had a little bit of that, and I'm like, it's one of the things I'm super grateful for. And I think the joy of annoying somebody over something unimportant to kind of test their own limited mindset is a joy unlike any other joy in life.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, weirdness is indeed your superpower, 100%. Like just today, I was driving the car with a very good friend of mine, and we were both just randomly singing and dancing in the weirdest way possible. And it felt so super good, you know, to just scream the dumbest shit that comes to your mind and just releasing all of that. It feels so super good. And also, like, when you dare to, or when you're courageous enough to be weird around people who normally are not allowing themselves to be weird, they also can express their weirdness. Like that's the beautiful thing when they are open-minded. Because like a few weeks ago, I was playing the piano at home, and my mom was sitting next to me. I was playing the piano, and as I'm playing the piano, I'm moving quite a lot, and you know, and dancing a little bit to it. And she said to me, "Oh, don't move so much, don't move so much." And I said, "Don't move so much, I'm not moving enough." let me show you how I can move even more. And she danced to it too. So yeah, just expressing the weird side that you have inside yourself is something so freeing and something so beautiful, because we are all weird, and it's beautiful that it is that way.
Definitely, I completely agree. As we wrap up, is there anything that you want to offer to the audience in terms of like being sensitive and strong and all of that kind of thing? Is there any advice you would give to people on their journeys?
As being somebody who has a very unique case of being neuroatypical and then transitioning into being neurotypical, and then being somebody very hypersensitive and then being not so sensitive, just experience everything and love yourself. The number one service that you can do for other people is loving yourself. And if you're worried about friends, if you're worried about being weird, I would recommend that you watch the show Freaks and Geeks. I don't know if anybody here has ever seen it, but it's an old show from the early 2000s, 90s, and there's a scene in Freaks and Geeks with a character called Gordon. Gordon is this super fat, chubby kid who smells all the time, and people avoided him. And there's a scene in which the main like kid characters are with Gordon, and they have to be in the situation where they're with him. And it turns out Gordon is super awesome. And he says, you know, my bad smell is my superpower, because whoever hangs out with me is the person that I know is going to be my friend, who's going to stay with me. And it's something where be weird, be yourself. Don't be weird, be yourself. Because if you're not weird, or it's not your superpower, or you're somebody who likes sports, or whoever you are, just be yourself. And you will have friends beyond your reasoning. You know, you may not have a lot of friends sometimes. You know, I certainly don't have like a plethora of friends, like 20, 40, 50 friends, but I have a handful of friends that I can count on for the rest of my life. I have like the Mama's Boys, for example. We went through some shit. We went through some shit in the jungle, boys. Like something great. we literally traveled dimensions together. We went places and healed. So for like the Mama's Boys and some handful of friends that I have, they're some of the best people that I've ever have the pleasure of knowing in my entire life. And that's just because I was my genuine self. Be your genuine self. Fuck the noise. Fuck it. Lay it on your bed and just go. I'm kidding.
I love that, Noah. I love the passion as well. Excellent.
Thank you. Always be passionate too.
Hell
Thank
yeah.
you for reminding me.
What about you, Dominic?
First of all, I absolutely loved it again to talk to you, Harris. Like it's incredible how fast time goes by whenever we talk, like really crazy. And to everyone who is listening to that, I can say you got this, even though there will be times where you think you're losing it, but trust me, you got this. And for everyone who is going through depression like we did, know that better times are coming 100%. After winter, there comes summer. And it always is like that. Change is possible because like I experienced so much change in myself that I can definitely say change is possible, and change will come to those who are still seeking. And whenever you feel lost, it's just a sign that you're ready to find something new. So that is what I want to give out to people.
I love that. And just before you go, I wanted to ask, I meant to ask this at the beginning, so I might chop it and like move it to the beginning. What made you guys choose the name Mama's Boys podcast?
Oh man, I love this because for people who don't know, ayahuasca has this spirit associated with it, and her name is Mama Ayahuasca. And a lot of the times when you take ayahuasca, there's this very feminine energy that comes to visit you, this very feminine spirit that helps you in ways that you could never imagine. And side note, feel the calling before you take ayahuasca. It's a very intense thing. It's not something I recommend for everybody, but if you feel like this is something for you, really, really soul search deep inside of yourself, because it's very intense. Anyway, because of this feminine energy, we all called ayahuasca Mama Aya, Mother Ayahuasca, and because we are so grateful for the healing that she gave us, we thought it appropriate that the only name we could have for our podcast was Mama's Boys. We are the Mama's Boys of Mother Ayahuasca.
That's amazing.
We are, yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. And hopefully, I mean, I'm sure in the future I'll manage to drag Z and Nick on, and maybe we could do all of us. We could talk about something specific. And but I'm so glad that you two got to come on and introduce yourselves to the audience. And I hope that off the back of this, people will come and discover you and get to know you more off of your podcast.
Thank you very, very much for having us. I would just like to mention one last thing. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Buzzsprout. We're releasing a website very, very soon. So by the time this is released, we should have the website released. And you can find us on Instagram as well. Follow us on Instagram. You'll see notifications about when we release episodes, but that's the end of the little plug in there. Thank you very, very much, Harris. As Dominic said, whenever we talk with you, it just seems like it's like 20 minutes. And in reality, it's been like, what, 2 hours almost?
Yeah. It's always when we get to the end of our conversations and I'm like, oh, I'm going to pee myself.
That's a good call, by the way.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it and think someone you know might benefit from it, please do share it with them and leave me a review. If you'd like more resources and information, you can go to my website, mooksharrishill.com, where you can also join my mailing list or Facebook group to stay up to date and in contact. You can also connect with me on social media at Empaths Revolution. The Empaths Revolution podcast was created and produced by your host, Harris Eddie Hill.